Hello, everyone, and welcome to SR Socially Relevant Film Festival's 7th annual edition, which this year goes online. Our March program, which was supposed to happen from March 16 to the 22nd, was canceled because, of course, of COVID-19. And now we decided to take the entire program online because we didn't want to sacrifice these wonderful films that the wonderfully talented, socially relevant filmmakers have made. Socially Relevant Film Festival welcomes you to its 7th annual edition this year online. And I want to talk about resilience. Resilience in the face of the health problem, resilience of our essential workers, resilience of the filmmakers who ignore the dictates of the commercial world and instead focus on social issues, bringing us films that concentrate on socially relevant human interest stories. This year, we focus on climate change, violence against women and girls, gun violence, medicine and healthcare, mental health, bullying and teenage suicide, immigration, refugees and indigenous peoples' rights to ancestral lands, the LGBTQ movement and trans rights, social entrepreneurship, and peace in the world. Most importantly, peace and understanding in the world. And as we draw attention to the plight of the most vulnerable groups who pay the highest price in human and natural disasters. We open the spotlight panel and salute our distinguished panelists and their resilience, and together we are stronger. We thank our wonderful panel for dedicating the time in their busy schedules and sharing their experience and knowledge with us today. We stand together in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And in our 7 editions, we have screened over 20 films dealing with the Black experience and showing films about prejudice, racism, and social injustice. We are hoping to pull together a retrospective of these films soon. Like previous years, we offer script readings to the script writing competition finalists. The Socially Relevant Film Festival team is grateful to everyone who contributed to the success of our past 6 editions. And this festival is a collective effort, and without everyone's help, it is not possible to bring it to fruition. I am deeply indebted to our board members, to our wonderful festival team who work tirelessly to bring you the festival. We have interns who join us from France, Korea, Morocco, China, Ethiopia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. They work tirelessly making Socially Relevant Film Festival a successful event. A huge shout out to them all. We are proud to enjoy the support of foundations, granting bodies and businesses such as the City of New York Department of Cultural Affairs, Lower Manhattan Cultural Council, Cinema Libre Studio, Square Mango Films, and the support of our sponsors who share our vision. We could not chart this journey without their support. This film festival offers us a unique opportunity to share ideas and concerns with like-minded people and establish dialogue with others. Dear film lovers, socially responsible citizens, audience members, and now friends, this is your festival. I want to give a special shout out to our filmmakers who choose to tell socially relevant stories and are not sucked into the requirements of the commercial world out there, telling violence and explosions and chases and stuff, which are okay if they are linked to socially relevant issues and they tell social issues. I also want to do a huge shout out to our 22 or 23 or more jury members who from all over the world took the time to view the films and are going to relay to us their final results, which we will share with everyone and distribute the awards on Sunday the 28th on another Zoom, which hopefully I will have figured out by then and we won't have this delay. So everybody take a seat, take a comfortable seat in front of your Zoom lenses and be moved to different parts of the world. So let me first introduce our wonderful panel. Here I have the panelist bios, which I will read to you. I'm not sharing my screen. So we have with us Cynthia Lopez. How do we, maybe when I say your name, you shake your hand or something so people know who is who. I guess your names are also written at the bottom of your screen. Cynthia Lopez is the Executive Director of New York Women in Film and Television, the preeminent professional association for women in film, television, and digital media in New York City, of which I am happy to say that I'm a proud member, and we partner with NYWIFT. She is an award-winning media strategist and former commissioner of New York City Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, and we have also benefited from a nice letter she has written to us in that capacity a bunch of years ago in one of our previous editions. Prior to working as commissioner, Cynthia Lopez was executive vice president and co-executive producer of award-winning PBS documentary series, American Documentary POV. We are happy to have Cynthia with us. Next, we have Houry Geudelekian, chair of NGO CSW Committee on the Status of Women, New York, and UN coordinator of Unchained at Last, an ECOSOC accredited US-based organization that fights to stop early marriage in the US. As a board member of NGO CSW, Houry was a founding member of the Cities and CEDAW campaign, as well as Beijing Platform for Action Plus 20, working closely with UN Women. She is always actively working to bring gender equality to global attention while mentoring young adults to be inspired and care about human rights. She has also facilitated and partnered with UN member states, UN Women, UNDP. We are happy to have Houry with us. Next, we have Viktorija Mickute, who is, I hope I pronounced your name right, Viktorija.
It's okay. It's Mickute, but it's a good try.
Mickute, right? Is a senior producer at Al Jazeera Contrast, Al Jazeera's Emmy-nominated immersive storytelling and media innovation studio. Viktorija's journalism and career began in her native Lithuania, where she worked as a foreign news producer and later a social media TV host show for the Lithuanian national television. She was awarded with a Fulbright scholarship and earned a master's degree from Missouri School of Journalism. Viktorija's work spans continents and examines many different human experiences, from her own groundbreaking documentary, Invisible Her, about PTSD in America, to reporting from South Sudan, the Rohingya refugee camps in Bangladesh. Viktorija is passionate about visual storytelling and explores the depths of human emotion and shares the struggles and experiences of unreported people around the world. Kathleen the Kerchove is next. She just joined us. I'm glad we got to fight and win with technology. She's co-founder. Oh, I also have to say we are happy to have Viktorija with us. She was a later addition to our team, but we are so happy to have you, Viktorija. Kathleen is co-founder and president of the NGO, The Children of Panzi and Elsewhere. And as a pediatric nurse, psychotherapist, body psychotherapist, trained and certified in EMDR and trauma therapy, her priority has always been women and children's mental and physical well-being. Traveling the world due to her husband's work, His Excellency Ambassador Mark Pekstein, permanent representative of Belgium to the United Nations, she has always involved herself in local communities. And we have also had the honor of having the ambassador with us in previous editions. In Rwanda, Kathleen dedicated herself to the support of widows and orphans from the genocide who were suffering post-traumatic stress syndromes. More recently, during a mission in Iraq, she witnessed the atrocities committed on girls by Daesh, sometimes very young girls, who had just escaped from the hands of their kidnappers. Currently, in New York, she continues to defend the cause of the children of young girls treated as sexual slaves in conflict, in post-conflict zones. We are happy to have her with us. Last but not least, joining us from Lebanon, we have Dayna Ash, who is a cultural and social activist, playwright, performance poet, and the founder and executive director of the nonprofit arts organization Haven for Artists, based in Beirut, Lebanon. And she's an award winner and has gotten many awards and recognitions, the most recent of which is the NGO CSW New York awardee award of Women of Distinction for 2020. Then she's also BBC 100 Women Most Inspiring and Influential Women, the Frontline Women of Lebanon's Uprising, a Field Curator Fellowship, nominated for Fellowship Award, and we are happy to have Dayna join us on this panel. Okay, panelists, so I'm going to quickly show our audience the trailers of the films. So also an opportunity for us to remember these films. And for that, I'm going to share my screen. So here we go. Quickly, this is the festival trailer. Great. Voices on the Road is one of our next movies. I'm going to go just in the order in which they are showing here. I'm going to keep it like this because when I'm going big screen, I am losing the others.
Nosotros hablamos Parque Nacional de los Humanos, pulmón del mundo. Pero en el pulmón del mundo, ahí la gente se está muriéndose de hambre.
seres humanos que necesitan tener una calidad de vida. Y eso es lo que pedimos, calidad de vida.
Esta riqueza, todo esto es de ustedes, de sus hijos. Y eso prohíbe hacer una carretera. Por eso hay que luchar.
Dicen que con la carretera van a mejorar su situación de vida. ¿Pero de qué manera? Es mentira.
Es la zona roja lo que están en peligro.
Okay, next we have Mother, Daughter, Sister, which is about the Rohingya experience and genocide.
अगर ये रात में मान लो यार तारक तुम हो सोन भाड़ी ले रात बंद करे आज बंद ये मुंह बंद ही पड़े
Chân nhân chuẩn phải gọi chuyên nghiệp không tốt đấy thì mà làm được tình trạng này Alhamdulillah mama le mai vandar ni japin ko jena bura mai vandar bisi taki bore kha mama se bisa dile na bisa faiba ame turo ma ke ya mera turo go akipe bo atwa jamaro a lung pu pang bi tanai nge lung go thin kya ya me mai se go ye den jo ni kita go nan khit en ni wa shen na do chen just
Next we have Leaving to Live.
It's true.
C'était la femme de ma vie. Vous êtes mes repères toutes les deux, moi je suis rien sans vous. Tu me regardes. Tu sais que je t'aime. Je te parle, ok? Putain, tu vois ce que tu me fais faire.
And the last one on this program, Like No Other.
(2010) has been the year of floods worldwide. This has been a year of natural disasters beyond any imagination, and certainly passing and exceeding the capacities of the international community to respond. So if we have a number like 20 million people, so how do you find the ones who need it first? How do you find the people, target the people who will die eventually if you don't assist them? Very clearly, people need a roof. They need at least one room, proper facilities.
So I'm stopping because as we are short on time, I am thinking that it might be better to give the talk, me sit back now that we figured out all the technology, and have the panelists take the lead. So please feel free to jump in and make your introductions or your talks. If it's okay with you, we might end up extending another 10 minutes after the designated time to allow the audience members to give out some questions. There's a Q&A link, or they can also respond in the chat. I'm going to go back and monitor these as you take over. Thank you for your patience, and apologies, everybody, for all these glitches. Now we are, after this confinement is over, we're all going to become Zoom specialists, I promise you. Okay, who wants to take the lead? Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to talk?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Nora, for organizing this very timely event and to give me the opportunity to talk about people, about climate change, about displaced people and the consequences. Today, you may know, is the International Day for the Elimination of Sexual Violence in Conflict. You may not see any link to climate change, but if you look closely, you can see that climate change is going to provoke and is already provoking displacement of people. And we know that displaced people are more vulnerable to sexual violence. Poverty, due to this displacement, often leads to domestic violence and also sexual violence. It was nicely illustrated in the short film, like Mother, Fly High, or Mother, Daughter, Sister. Climate change is responsible for displacement of population, camp construction, trauma, and conflict. Population are deeply traumatized. They cannot fulfill their basic needs. Access to shelter, to food, to clean water and healthcare is a human right. And in these temporary camps, a lot of the basic needs are missing. And temporary become permanent. And the world, we, are helpless witness of these people struggling to survive in the camps. Are we really helpless? Do we have no way of acting? COVID-19 was an emergency and everyone was concerned with no discrimination. Everyone accepted to immediately review the way they were living. We were all shelter home. Nobody protested against that. What about climate change? Yeah. No immediate pressure, so no action taken. And COVID-19 has tremendously helped the planet. But now that the economy reopened, the race for profit will start again, and climate will no longer be a priority. Inaction is not an option, and raising awareness is a priority, and that is why such festival is important. And I would like to talk more about trauma and how it affects generation. In the film Mother, Daughter, and Sister, like Other, Chasing the Glacier, and Voice on the Road, you can see the terrible loss people suffer, the deep trauma, but also how resilient people are. Like the Other, the man is alone, no more wife, no more kids, no purpose of life anymore. In the other film, the family are packed in tents, relying on external goodwill for the supply of their basic needs: food, water, healthcare. Mental health professionals are missing, and it is rare that such trauma is addressed. Yeah. How can you raise your kids with dignity if you lost your own?
That's so well put, Kathleen. I really could not have made such a nice, much nicer of a resume, and tying up. That's why we put together environment and women, because these are two very closely related issues, and we should all mobilize, like just as we mobilized around this health issue, we should also mobilize about environment. say that maybe let's have a round of, let's see what other panelists have to say, and then we'll open it for further discussion.
Sure.
Anyone? Takers? Viktorija? You
Sure.
do this type of films, so maybe.
Yes. It's actually, when I was watching many films, I felt like transported back into many locations that I've been, because I did one virtual reality film we did about Rohingya refugees, a couple of films actually. You know, I traveled to Malaysia to do a story about deforestation and Orang Asli people there and how their lives have been affected by that. So actually, I really felt like those films transported me there, and I'm very happy that people are actually doing more of those films in every part of the world. So from my perspective, what I wanted to say and add to the discussion is that when I'm thinking about climate justice stories and climate change stories, I've been thinking so much how many times they've been very sensationalized, and we hear about them when, you know, a hurricane hits or something happens, and then, you know, the fire happens and the forests are being burning, and then we pay attention and then we start discussing why is this happening. But the point is that is happening every day, and those communities in the farther places around the world are actually going through those challenges and those struggles every day. And it's so hurtful to hear the people, when I was filming a documentary about desertification in Morocco, when people are actually saying these words that we know, but we don't hear that often, when they say like, we don't cause the change, but we are experiences all the consequences here in this desert, and why we have to struggle with this while we don't do anything to cause these changes in the world. So I think the most important is to acknowledge that it's happening every day, and go far to those faraway places and to bring those stories and to show that that change and that injustice is actually happening every day, as in the films, let's say, Voices on the Road or Chasing Glaciers and other films. Like, we see those communities and we spend with those communities time, and I think that's the most important. And also connecting to what we've been talking about other issues that are happening on top of climate justice next to it. So it's also very important to give wider context in terms of how it affects communities, you know, the psychological, mental health of the community, how it affects women in terms of violence and traumas, and you know, what are things happening, migration, so many things are happening. We cannot also just stop talking that with the fact that the temperature is rising or something is changing, something is happening. We have to talk how it affects the community, the generations actually of that community, and how it will affect in the future.
Totally. And also, it's not only how it affects a particular community, just like the COVID situation, it's a global thing. Mm-hmm. If it affects a community in Pakistan, that is also affecting a community in, I don't know, the United States. It's everywhere. The entire world is interrelated. And one lesson maybe we learned from the health issue or crisis that we all faced is that we are all together in this. The effects of these climate situations, the effects of these health pandemics, it's not only a community, and then if we isolate that community, it's over, and then we can go about our happy-go-lucky lives. No, everything is completely interrelated. And that is a very, very important thing that we can take away from these talks, is that we are all responsible and we are all affected in one way or another. So let's see what Cynthia, I couldn't help but admire the background with all these incredible awards. I'm like, my eyes are shining just behind you. Oh my God, thank you for being with us. You're mute.
Thank you, Nora, and my fellow panelists. I absolutely concur with what my colleagues have just said. For myself, I'm in Jackson Heights, New York. And I'm about 6 blocks from Elmhurst Hospital, which was considered sort of the epicenter of New York City, largest immigrant population being affected by COVID. And for me, I have to say, when I watch the films, I just I actually wept because I said, again, my strong congratulations to all of these filmmakers, because cinematically the films were breathtaking. It was, I always used to say when I was an executive at PBS, the best documentary is the documentary that takes you to a place you've never been, holds you there, and when you come back, you won't forget it. And every single documentary that you have programmed as part of Socially Relevant Film Festival that we saw is exceptional in that I remember a particular woman or a particular person in each of these documentaries and their story. When we look at from the contrast between the violence against women in all different places and the climate change, you know, I have to say the first documentary, which is about Pakistan and the events that happened in 2010 and how they were displaced to, I guess, the Burma, you know, and how genocide, you know, they used rape and torture to, you know, chase the people out of the country. I think globally, the one thing that COVID has made us realize is that we are global citizens. So even for myself, I've traveled the world, but I say to myself, and I'm writing a piece that's called Where Puerto Rico Meets Pakistan. But when I looked at the piece, I was like, how could I not remember what happened in 2010? Exactly. That's 10 years ago. But yeah. I don't remember that specific incidents that they had. And I say, why? I read 5 newspapers a day. But that was something I didn't remember until I watched the film. And so I do think that how we live, even the people, you know, I remember when I first bought a hybrid, my family was criticizing me there because they were like, oh my God, you got this little putt-putt car, it doesn't even move fast. And I said, well, this is my contribution. I try to pick the right products to be able to be in sync with what I'm doing. And I think we all have to take that responsibility with us on, you know, what are you driving? What are you eating? What are you doing socially? What are you doing politically that can either help or hurt the environment? Because as we can see from these films, you know, it's changing every single day. And I remember I was recently someplace up in, you know, a couple of years ago, I was in Alaska, and I was just like, oh my God, the changes that are palpable that you see there that are impacting us here, even when we look at the weather changes, but somehow we don't want to pay attention to that until it's a crisis. And I guess how Socially Relevant Film Festival uses media to signal that we're not only in a health crisis and a financial crisis, we're in an environmental crisis, and we've got to take heed now. So I applaud you, and I applaud the filmmakers, and for my colleagues who are journalists, you know, I keep thinking we have to do something different to get people to, even myself, to be more conscious of reading what it is you all are doing. Even the UN Women's Group, I'm like, oh gosh, I have to read more about what they're doing against violence, because I don't go to that and I don't figure out what's the one thing I can do every 2 months, or what's the one thing I can do to be of assistance to stop violence against women. We should all be doing that. So I applaud, you know, everybody on this panel for each of you taking and really working so hard, as well as the filmmakers, to get this important information out.
Before going to Houry, since you mentioned the women's groups and NGOs and all that, let me introduce 2 of the filmmakers who are here. Bethan is representing Voices on the Road, and I'm going to promote her to a panelist so we can see her. Yay, Bethan is here. And also Claudia Adams, she's the producer of Like No Other, the Pakistan film that you referred to. I'm promoting her as well. Claudia and Bethan, if you can hear me, please put yourselves on camera if you like to be seen, so we can see you. I'm looking in the list of participants and I don't see any of the other filmmakers from today's films. Let me say that the filmmakers of today's films have a panel on their own on Monday at 5:30 p.m. And our wonderful panelist, Viktorija here, has kindly agreed to moderate that panel. So we're going to have a larger discussion, like more and in depth about these films with those filmmakers that made them. So before we give the talk to the filmmakers, let me go to Houry and Dayna. So whoever, Houry, let's have Houry first, because she also gave an award to Dayna. So, and then we'll link the two together like that. Okay.
Sure, I'll just take a few minutes because I seriously commend and agree with all the panelists and what you're doing, Nora, because we at United Nations, let's say, I really represent civil society voices at the United Nations.
Put me on camera.
I've got to go back to the main screen.
Oh, now you've muted her.
No. I haven't. No. Please unmute yourself. I cannot unmute you. Who is muted?
Back to the main screen.
I muted myself again.
This will put us back to the main screen.
All right, do.
Well, maybe we could listen to Houry, like.
Yeah, let's listen to Houry.
Okay, I'll be even briefer. So yes, the NGO Committee on the Status of Women is a global coalition of civil society organizations who work in gender equality. Now, gender equality, you know, you would think that it's all just feminist, you know, women's equality, but climate, peace, and security, all of this intersects, obviously, right? And you could see from these movies on how women are affected. And in that, I don't want to forget to say that one of the things from all the films that stood out for me in The Voices on the Road in Peru, which I highly recommend, it was really an amazing film. And you could see how all the locals were arguing about the road or not the road. I don't want to give away the film for those who haven't watched it. But in the end, they closed the film with all the men saying, "We have with the road, we will have better life." And then the one woman in that, at the end, she says, "I hope the road will help," because the men are like so convinced that the road will improve. And women always question, and I just wanted to highlight that because, and it's one of the reasons why I think feminist activism and women in these fields are really, really important, our voices. And as much as we fight for rights with member states, with documents, with agreements, with, okay, this visual representation is really important. I think we can't just say, obviously the collective voice is important, but we also have to remember what really affects people to pay attention, our voices like Greta, our voices like Malala. So we need to look for those amazing, influential young activists, as well as our own collective voices that we as NGO CSW bring to the table. And yes, I'm very proud to have awarded, and one of our award, Margarita Jones actually is here too, who helped find Dayna Ash from Lebanon, and I'm just so proud to have her as part of our family as well.
Yeah, it's very important to stress the visual element, because now we are a world where everything is visual, especially the younger generations. They are so, the attention span has become so short. Like if you don't get what you want on the spot right now in front of you on the screen, then it's not important. So we have to speak that language. Long talks and write-ups and things like that, they are all being forgotten and put aside. It's the visual. And in fact, we should make the films even shorter. I'm happy to say that we are already accepting submissions for our 2021 edition, but I'm liking this online version so much that I'm thinking that maybe next edition should have a mixture of both, because being in the cinema, of course, it's very important, but this is amazing because the last couple of days I've been doing live Facebook talks, and the one I did yesterday has already had 1,300 views. And I'm like, we never had that kind of audience in the festival. We had 156 people maximum for each film screening. So I'm like, okay, maybe there is something to this. Also, the length of the films, and next year we're also introducing a Zoom-made film, because people are sitting in their homes right now and thinking, how do we do with this situation? How do we make our films? Zoom, and we have a category for that. So let's hear from Dayna, and then I already have the two filmmakers here, Bethan and Claudia. Claudia is the producer of Like No Other, and Bethan is one of the directors of Voices on the Road. But let's hear Dayna first.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dayna Ash. I'm the Executive Director of Haven for Artists based in Beirut. We work at the intersection of art and activism. So all of our work pretty much basically is about being socially conscious of the issues that we are constantly being faced with and using art as the tool to actually utilize change and to ensure that we expand awareness, accessibility. That's why I think online is definitely the best way to go, because not a lot of people can go to New York and watch the films, but all of us can go online and watch them like I'm doing now from Beirut. This access is extremely important. And I think that is probably the very small positive thing that COVID kind of taught the globe, is that you can make museums free. You can make films for free. You can make this for the public. And it's made people also realize the necessity of art and culture in your everyday life. A lot of people forget that you need all of these things in order to sustain your mind and to continue to continuously grow. On the premise of what, just a note of what you said about making things very small and minimal and short for online, because people have very short attention spans. I think that my different rationale to it is actually that there's so much information. There's just so much information, and we're constantly weeding through so much information. So it's not about making it small because we have a small attention span, but by the end of it, I think everyone on this panel can say we are overwhelmed with the amount of things happening in the world, and what social media and the internet has presented us is access to all of these spaces at all times. Which, of course, you know, if you're 1% curious or you care about social justice, you're going to be involved. You're going to want to know what's going on. You're going to constantly be either sobbing or not sleeping. Those are the two realities I think activists feel quite continuously. From the thing that I predominantly got from the films, and I think I tried to sum it up in one sentence, which is because a lot of the films also interviewed, UN members that came in and distributed aid and stuff like that. And there was just one thing, because I used to also do this, and the one thing that popped into my head is emergency aid is the reaction and not the preventative action. And none of us are doing preventative action. When we talk on a singular individual basis, I don't think my carbon footprint is exponentially going to change climate change as much as making sure that I pressure every single legal outpost I have into pressuring corporations that are spending up to 70% of carbon emissions. I mean, of the world's carbon emissions. So my 30% is from 7 billion people, it's 30%, and you have 70% from 5 corporations. So by the end of it, you go, yes, there is a massive responsibility on us to shed light on the situation, but we also need to equally shed light on the fact that all of these things could have either been prevented or mediated. In particular with what we're talking, the two separate films, the monsoon that happened in Pakistan in 2010, there was a lot of ways I think that we've always known. I mean, we have to stop pretending like global disasters are like, oh, I didn't expect this to come. I mean, it's been happening every single year all over the world in such exponential rates that it's ludicrous for us to assume that this is just an occasional occurrence, because obviously it's all interconnected. And when we come down and we look at it on a micro scale with how it affects communities and how it affects them further marginalizes and oppresses women, especially if we're talking women of color, the impact is too intersectional for us to divide any of these facets. There's no way to say one's a priority or one's the responsibility of the other. They're so interwoven that it is impossible to try to approach one act and not automatically be aware and to approach the rest. I mean, I keep saying the revolution, because Lebanon is in a revolution right now. We've been on it for 8 months. We're very proud of our revolution. We're going to bring down the system, hopefully. So it's just my little, positive note. We're going to bring down the system. So the biggest thing that we've come to realize is that the revolution is fought on all multiple fronts. You can't say women's rights are later or LGBTQ rights are later or, trans rights are, no. They're all at the same time. And if they're not, we're just failing different members of society in order to benefit a singular group, therefore creating more marginalized groups.
Absolutely, totally agree with what you're saying. And your point about emergency aid becoming the Band-Aid, and it's like people think that, oh, I did my thing, I went and brought them help, I distributed food, I did this, I did that. Yeah, but how long can you keep going and distributing food, on putting a Band-Aid on a wound? We need to go to the core of the problem and find out how to make a huge change, how to make a radical change. But from our point of view, from the film festival, it's like, okay, there are so many people who aren't even aware of these things. So what we are doing with the means that I have, or we have, and I also strongly believe that the cinema has a very, very powerful impact. The visual image has a very powerful impact potential. And instead of wasting money in making huge Hollywood productions with no content and, explosions and lots of special effects and what have you.
Interpretations of the East.
Yeah, exactly. Completely haywire interpretations, their own interpretations of the East and so on. Why not invest that money in making more films of the socially relevant kind, or let these filmmakers have more means to tell these wonderful stories as a start? Because once people are aware, maybe they can do something about it. And I like what you said in your point about not isolating groups. It's not like, oh, I belong to the young lesbian Black women's group. Okay, what can you go a step further and make it even smaller? That's not the point. The point is that these matters affect everyone all over the world. It doesn't mean that the specific problems of particular groups are to be diluted and forgotten about, but it's humanity that is facing important turning points in its destiny, and not particular groups. In our festival this year, for example, we have 2 films. One of them is called Inside Outside, and it's about mass incarcerations of women, specifically, of women of color, more particularly, but it's also talking about the prison system. So these 2 are bringing together the entire conversation. Another film of the same category, similar, is Stonewall with a T, which is talking about the LGBTQ movement, but particular reference to the trans people who are being violently murdered or aggressed or misunderstood or completely miscategorized, or whatever it is that you want to call it. And also subcategory of that, of color. So that LGBTQ, trans, of color. And I'm like, okay, we need to talk about these things. We need to bring these to the forefront so that we understand that everybody is concerned. So let's see, our check time. Yes, I know, we have 10 minutes, 10 extra minutes. We asked kindly for our panelists. So I think we've done the round for the panelists. Let's see if audience members, earlier I saw a couple of audience members. Oops, I'm not sharing my screen. No, not that. A couple of hands were risen. So Linda, we'll allow you to talk. You can't be seen, but you can talk. If you have a question to our panelists or to our filmmakers, please feel free to ask it now. And it goes with the other attendees as well. There is a hand-raising possibility here, I can see next to your chat name, which means you want to ask a question, because I'm looking in the Q&A and I don't see anyone using the Q&A function. I'm going to look in the chat to see if somebody has asked a question. I don't see questions there. All right. So Linda, can you hear me? You need to unmute yourself because you are on microphone. Your microphone is muted. Hello? Linda? Your microphone is muted, but we can't hear you. Talking permitted, it says here, but she's not on. Okay, well, so let's have the panelists continue the conversation until Linda figures out the mic situation. And we have two of the filmmakers with us, so feel free to ask them questions. And you filmmakers, feel free to ask questions to our panelists. Okay.
Could I just thank everybody for spending the time watching our film. I know a lot of you are filmmakers and media people, so you probably are aware of how much goes into making a film. So it's really amazing to have you all have watched it. And thank you, Houry. Sorry, how do you pronounce your name? Houry?
Houry, that's fine.
Houry. Thank you very much for your kind words about the film. It means a lot to have people watch it and feel a connection to the story that we were trying to tell. And I suppose from my perspective and from the project Voices on the Road, what we found what's happening in this particular situation, and which is very relevant to what is happening now, is this sense of structural disempowerment and structural ways that people are discriminated against and not given a voice, and their power is taken away from them to do anything about the situation that they're put in. And that is something that we felt very strongly when we went to visit the communities based in the Amazon, who realized that when they were going to get this road, there were going to be all kinds of issues about drug trafficking and the abuse of women that they had no control over preventing. And they knew that this was going to happen, yet they still campaigned for the road to their community because they had no other choice. There was nothing else that was being presented to them as an alternative. And I think it's a very symbolic thing of what happens often in marginalized communities. They're only given one option, and that option is to the benefit of people in power and benefit of people who are going to use their marginalization, their disenfranchisement to improve their own situation. And I think that's an issue that is very topical at the moment.
Thank you so much, Vithan. Sorry, I was like interrupting. I have two more people who, Natalie is asking a question. So please unmute your mic so you can ask the question. And then I will have Kathleen asking a question. You can also unmute yourselves to ask a question. Natalie first. Go ahead, Natalie.
Hi, it's very nice to meet you, Bethan. I really enjoyed Voices on the Road a lot, both for its beautiful cinematography and the storytelling about the people in the film, who I don't think are a community we get to see very often. And my question was actually, I was very impressed that you seem to be able to get very deep into this community and hear the different sides of the debate about the road and what was going on there with regards to climate change. So I was wondering like how you got to know them and sort of got embedded like this.
The question is very interesting because it inspires other people to go out and make films. How did you get to know them?
Yeah.
So thank you for the question, Natalie, and for watching the film and enjoying it. So I worked out in that region of the Amazon since 2016 at a field research station, and it's something that's probably not talked about, but very important. The planning that goes into making films like these it's a lot of time making contacts with people that live there and NGOs that are working on the ground. A lot of time talking about how your presence in that situation is going to have negative impacts on those communities, and making sure everybody's aware of that. So it was a lot of planning, a lot of organization, a lot of working with people that had worked with those communities for decades and live in that area. So it's really important as filmmakers, as journalists, that you don't just fly into an area, parachute in and kind of take people's stories and then leave. That was something that we were very sensitive towards, the negative impact of doing that, and understanding what you can do if you go into certain communities. And then we have a whole Peruvian team. So both of the filmmakers and the producers are from the UK. So we really knew that we had to work with Peruvians, and they had to be completely embedded within our approach. And we have a lot of Peruvian advisors, a lot of people that we teamed up with, anthropologists and scientists. So it's making sure you have that diversity in the team that you're working with, and just understanding the limitations of as a Westerner ever understanding a story. Yeah. So knowing that you're a white Westerner, you have a lot of responsibility of looking after that story and taking that on board, and really making sure that you're doing everything you can to tell that story in an honest way as much as you possibly can.
Unfortunately, I have to jump in because we're really taking advantage of our panelists' presence here and by stretching their presence with us. But I will take one more question from Tallinn. And then I have to say that if you wanted to chat longer with Bethan and the films that you saw today, there is a chat specially with those filmmakers on Monday at 5:30. Let me repeat that. And Viktorija is moderating that conversation. So I invite everybody to come and be part of that, and then you can ask your questions. Let's concentrate on questions to the panelists in this case, because we won't have a chance to see them on Monday. So Tallinn, can you ask your question? Can you hear me?
Yes, Nora, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, first of all, a special hello to Houry and Nora. Armenian Network is very proud to be a 7-year sponsor of the Socially Relevant Film Festival, and congratulations to all of you and your beautiful film accomplishments. My question is, given today's current environment and the abundance of the issues, do you anticipate socially relevant films in the future with today's current topics? Or what is important to you with everything that is going on between pandemic and protesting?
Absolutely.
What do you anticipate? Just a quick response from each of the panelists.
Yeah, well, let me first say myself, for the Socially Relevant Film Festival, which we initially said already, we are preparing a Black Lives Matter retrospective from films we already have shown before. And also in the next edition, we have a section on Zoom made on films reflecting the current health situation.
Mhm.
So, panelists, if you feel like responding, please do.
I'll just say thank you, Nora, for really having your finger on the pulse. It's really important to react to what's happening, especially with Black Lives Matter. And we need to honor today for being Juneteenth and, you know, being here. It's really important to lift ourselves up and lift everyone up with us.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us of Juneteenth. This is the anniversary of the abolition of slavery. And it's very, very important because if we look around us, we can see that there is a lot of slavery going on in the world still, right here in our doorsteps, outside our windows, and everywhere. And that's another issue besides environment, violence against women, slavery in all its shapes, forms, and sizes that we have to combat against. So not to abuse too much the press, I really feel bad because of the glitch we had in the beginning, and now this has been stretched so much. I want to thank our sponsors. Of course, a huge thank you again to our panelists. And if somebody wants to react, I will give you an opportunity at the end. But let me just not forget to thank our sponsors and say that we have a present which everybody is going to get. And I will show you that present in a second, which is this. Indie Pix, who has been also a long time partner of the film festival, has given us DVDs to raffle. And every time we have one of these live chats, you can enter to win. On our website, there is a button, it says enter to win. And the people who have registered to these live chats are going to, each session will have one winner. So don't think we're gonna end up distributing DVDs to everyone. I wish that was the case, but one. These are wonderful films that Indie Pix does, which are all social issue related or important films in that sense, art films. And of course, as a thank you, our panelists are going to get one each today. So I will stop sharing my thing here because we already had a glimpse of the bazaar on my desktop, and give a chance to the panelists if they want to respond to this last question again before we say bye-bye to everyone and take our leave. Whoever wants to jump in, how do we make sure there's more socially relevant content out there, was Tallin's question, if I'm not paraphrasing it wrong. I think Viktorija is already doing that through her platform on Al Jazeera Contrast. And Kathleen, she's not a filmmaker, but she's doing on the ground work. Dayna is artistically very much involved, and art is very important. I saw some surveys recently about, yes, and I wanted to also give a resilience for the health workers and the essential workers that have been there for us this whole 3-month period. Already we're hitting 3 months, but we should not forget artists. Artists should be in the essential worker category, because what have people been doing during this confinement? They've been watching films. They've been looking at documentaries. They've been listening to music. They've been reading books. They've been listening to poetry. And what is this if not artists? So how can one say artists are not essential workers? We are more essential than essential. So here's a little plug.
If I may, Nora, artists were very generous, because yes, how many kind of film we could see for free on the web, how many concerts, how many Broadway shows were shown. Exactly. It was amazing. So it's a big shout out for artists.
Exactly. Thank you everybody again so much. And really, honestly, I so much appreciate your patience, your resilience, your being with us today, sharing your thoughts. Please join us. We have a whole bunch of talks with the filmmakers. They're all going to be on YouTube Live. We're not going to be on Zoom. The Zoom is going to be Saturday the 27th, 3 p.m. for the finalist script competition finalist readings, and also on our closing awards night, when we are going to give out the awards to the winning filmmakers. And everything else is directly live streamed on our YouTube channel, which you can access from the festival website, www.ratedsrfilms.org. Thank you all very much. On the 7th edition of the Socially Relevant Film Festival, we're still there. Thank God we didn't close down. And I really, really appreciate your support from all angles.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Cynthia, Kathleen, Dayna, Houry, Viktorija, and the questions, and all the participants. Huge thank you to everyone. Bye.